Now let's talk about grief and loss. So think about in your life, and it could even be you. Have you ever known somebody who had a grief and loss? And if you have any maturity within you, aged, you had to have experienced some loss. And even young kids can experience a loss in the form of a pet or a grandmother, parents, whoever, so they have a grief and loss. So oftentimes what happens is when we experience an extreme grief and loss, from our perspective, we get lost in it and we become self-centered. We like to point this out. We become self-centered. It becomes all about us. This other person passed away, but now it becomes all about me. With what regards? Well, I should have visited them more. They were in the hospital for this long and I could have went. Or if I would have only done this, if I could have only, shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? If I could have only done this. So why didn't you? Remember when we were talking about earlier that we were all doing the best that we can with the resources and abilities that we had at the time. If you need a refresher, think about you. Have you ever done anything inappropriate in your life? And of course, most people say, yes. We're still looking for the first no, by the way. So when you think about the inappropriate thing that you did, could you have done better? And the typical answer is, of course I could have done better. Then my response is, why didn't you? Or were you doing the best that you could with the resources and the abilities that you had at the time? And again, the response is, no, I could have done a lot better. Then why didn't you? I don't know. I was younger. There was a whole bunch of things that were happening and influenced by my friends. I'm not blaming my friends, but well, why? Were you doing the best that you could? So we want you to get this and really get this. We are all doing the best that we can with the resources and the abilities that we have at the time and that we had at the time. Yeah? Including the people that do those inappropriate things. So one of the ones that I like to bring up is the Sandy Hook one. The person that killed those, this is extreme, killed those 25 and 6-year-olds. To me, that is like at the top of the list of aberrant behavior. Was he actually doing the best that he could with the resources and the abilities that he had at the time? Yes. However, just think about, was he responding from his bowl of light, or was it all of this stuff? If you were actually to peer into him and look at his bowl of light, you might not even see any light. That doesn't mean that he doesn't have it. It says that it's covered with a whole bunch of stuff. He's responding from this stuff. All these people that do these inappropriate things, they're covered with this stuff. And sometimes this stuff can be learned. Some of these memories that are blocking your connection to your own internal wisdom are learned behaviors. You can see this in society now at many various different levels. So now we're talking about grief and loss again. So remember how we talked about the person was getting self-centered and things, it's all about me. So when you think about that, we like to say, reverse the roles. Imagine, because what happens is when we start feeling extreme grief and loss, and if you've ever had extreme grief and loss, what do? Well, I can't stop thinking about the person. And then that might go on for a while. And if you're an earner, you have to take care of your kids, your wife, your husband, and you have to do stuff. What do? I got to stop thinking about them. So one of the laws of the mind, you suppress it. And then it comes back and you suppress it, you suppress it, you suppress it. And then after a while, what happens? It feels okay. Why? Because I don't think about them much anymore, if at all. Why? Because every time I think about them, I become incapacitated, if it's extreme enough. So, reverse the roles. Imagine you were the one that passed, and they're looking down on your life, and you're validating them like they're validating you. Or they're validating you like you're validating them. No, not thinking about them at all. Would you like that? They're not thinking about you at all. Probably not. Yeah? So what I want you to do is when we're doing the clearing, clear the negative emotions around any attachments to grief and loss that you might have, so that you can connect to the past. Because most of the time, a grief and loss is not the day that the person passed. It could be, but normally, especially if they had some health problems, it could be a year or so, or many years. So once you clear their passing, the grief and loss time, then you can connect to the past, the ups and downs, twists and turns that you had with the individual, which now you can also include their present, thinking about them in the present, and enjoying the past in the present, and knowing that when you think about them in the future, that you'll have that same feelings. Yeah? So you're combining the past, which includes their passing, the present, and the future.